Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have that sinking feeling that you might prefer to carry on listening to the girls than to hear my concluding speech. But seeing I've worked very hard at preparing it, and I don't want to be shown up by the young ladies on the platform, I hope you will bear with me. For those that don't know, my name is Kevin Tait, and I have the privilege of being the manager of the Ruth First JP Memorial Trust. And I would really like to add my own welcome and thanks for the fantastic turnout this evening. It has a lot to do with the speaker, Governor Marcus, and I really want to add my thanks to you for being willing to come and address this evening, for the commitment you've shown to this project and to the memory of Ruth First. But I think there's also a growing enthusiasm for the project itself as it begins to take greater and greater traction. This cannot be better illustrated than by the quality of the young ladies whose speeches you have just heard. I wonder how you would have coped when you were 12. I must admit to having some sympathy for the state president. But as I've never been to Malawi, I cannot comment on the state of their national roads. But President Zuma has somewhat controversially called for more good news to be celebrated rather than the daily fare of doom and disaster reported by the media. The problem is that there's so much bad news that one just can't ignore it. Now that reminds me of the good news, bad news genre of jokes, which are usually rather corny. It also dates me a little bit, but maybe some of you have heard these. The doctor says to his patient, "I've got good news and bad news. What do you want to hear first?" "You'd better give me the bad news, doctor." "Okay, I'm afraid your injuries are so serious that we're going to have to amputate your legs." "Wow, so, doc, what's the good news then?" "The guy in the bed next door wants to buy your Nike trainers." Or maybe something a little bit more subtle. There are lots of well-dressed aristocrats dining on a huge, luxurious ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The captain comes in and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I've got some good news and some bad news for you." "Tell us the good news, Captain," shouts one of the passengers. "Okay," says the captain, "congratulations. You've just won 11 Oscars." Now, the nature of the good news is magnified by the ironic contrast and the anticlimax with the bad news. The good news for women and girls is that there's probably never been a better time in history to have been born female, as gender rights are enshrined in our Constitution and enjoy broad acceptance in democratic societies. With the shattering of the glass ceiling, the sky virtually is the limit for girls. But the problem in South Africa is that there's so much bad news about being born a girl that's truly terrible. Especially if you think about the education and thus the survival of girls. There's international outrage at the brutal attack on Pakistani rape victim Mukhtar Mahal. But what about our own country? If you saw this week's Sunday Times, you could not have missed the article headlined Our Nation's Shame, which showed the pictures of 20 small children, just some of those murdered in our country since 2012. 16 or 80% of those were girls. You might also have seen the statistics the previous week on the number of pregnancies. 36,702. There's a departmental official that counts them. But 36,702 girls fell pregnant in 2010. 582 of them still in grade 6 or below, and 26 in grade 3. Some attribute the high number of child pregnancies to poverty, as well as to either single-parent or no-parent households. And I'm sure those play a very important role. But frighteningly, Joan van Niekerk, National Manager of Childline, attributes them to the results of sexual abuse at home. As the Sunday Times says, there's something deeply disturbing about the culture that assumes that girls are there to be violated, exploited, and abused. It's a reflection of a society that has lost its moral compass. Clearly, radical change is required to improve this state of affairs. And commenting about this calamity, former United Nations General Secretary Kofi Annan says that one of the cornerstones of the change required is the urgent need to empower women and to promote gender equality on our continent. In contrast to all this bad news, and one could go on and on, there are what Clem Sunter calls pockets of excellence, of which this school, and you've heard and seen, is proudly one. Mark Henning, in his recent book, Zest, quotes some research on predictors of success in life, and he lists 10 factors in order of importance. Top of the list, not surprisingly maybe, is that it's a good education. In a telling remark, though, he went on to say that it was not the content that mattered so much. So girls, maybe it doesn't matter so much about your results, but as the experience, the stretching of their minds and learning to think, the encounter with new worlds and new people. And listen to what these girls have done in terms of that encounter for this evening. So it's not only the 20%, the 20-year 100% pass rate or the over 95% university entrance rate. It's the experience of being at a school like this. Professor Hall, former rector of JCE, in research he conducted into why certain public schools are the best in the country, found that only one element prevailed in all of them. They had a core of long-serving and well-regarded teachers who carried the values and traditions of their school, conveying these to successive generations of pupils. Such is the hallmark of this great school. We're doing just that tonight, as we celebrate and honour our most famous Jeppy old girl, who wore a black and white blazer and sat in this hall regularly for assembly over 70 years ago, and went on to make the ultimate sacrifice for her country. These teachers at our school, and there are others like this, inculcate virtues like punctuality, responsibility, diligence, respect for others, tolerance, neatness, and many others. What perhaps many in this hall would take for granted as being normal and rather ordinary is in fact, especially in the context of all the bad news around us, truly extraordinary. This school takes its learners, and this is for those who didn't catch it just now, this school takes its learners off the Titanic and enables them to win Oscars. Many of you here are from the funding community. Others are private donors giving sacrificial amounts every month. In thanking you and encouraging you about the value of what you are doing, I want to quote Dr. Tait Blecher, who famously founded the Cedar City campus and now runs the Hamarashi Institute. Blecher, who is an actuary, in case you're wondering about this, claims that the result of his local research shows that for R1 invested in education, the return will be 100 Rand. If my financial maths is correct, that is a rate of return of 10,000%. That's better than putting your money in the Reserve Bank. I'm sure you'll agree with that. and yet it sounds like a pyramid scheme. R1 gives 100 Rand return. Is there anyone who's aware of a greater return on investment than that? If you are, please let me know. For all you wise investors, the funding needs of the Trust are constantly growing. The school fees for the 28 scholars next year will total 613,000 Rand. This, of course, has to be funded for the full 5 years of their schooling. When we get to the target of 50 girls in the system at any one time, that would be 1.095 million a year in today's values. There's currently no funding for the 2015 batch of scholarship recipients. There's all to do. I've got to start again. Girls, you have been funded, so you're okay. I've spoken on previous occasions about how a hostel would enhance the reach of the scholarship. The school has been investigating this option, and a suitable property for those who know Kensington Cosmos House, which was built as a convalescent facility, is on the market at 4.5 million. It's 0.8 of a kilometre away and could accommodate 50 boarders virtually immediately. But we don't only need your money, we need your time as well. You will have noticed in your handouts, I hope, that we are commencing a proper mentorship program for the scholarship girls. If you would be willing to get involved, please complete the form and return it to one of the organisers. We need 28 people and we've got about half of those already. So we'd like you to please add that to the list. And now in conclusion, may I ask please that you rise for the national anthem. It is in your brochure.